Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are attempting something pretty specialized.
I think that's putting it mildly.
Yeah. If you're a serious practitioner, or maybe just someone who gets really obsessed with the precise mechanics of how the mind works, this deep dive is definitely for you.
We're going straight to the source, to the operational manual of the mind.
We are.
And we've been handed a set of sources that demand what you might call Sikha-level precision.
What does that mean exactly?
It's the level of detail an advanced student, a Sikha, would need. Our mission today is to trace the functional relationship between the factors that wake us up, the bojjhaṅgas, and the 5 mental states that, according to these texts, actively shut down our wisdom.
The nīvaraṇā, the hindrances.
The very same.
And this whole inquiry, it really gets its start from this one powerful, almost poetic summary of the teaching that you hear all the time.
Nīvaraṇā bojjhaṅgā.
The hindrances are abandoned. The factors of awakening are developed. It sounds so simple.
It is doctrinally a marvel, isn't it? It summarizes the entire path in just a few words. But, and this is a crucial point from the source material you mentioned, that exact sentence. It doesn't actually appear, line for line, in the Pali Canon.
Right. It's a synthetic summary.
It is, and that distinction really matters for what we're doing today. Our goal is to show you the mechanism in the original texts. We're talking specifically SN 46 and MN 118 that makes that summary true. We need to see the gears turning.
The cause and effect loop.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's lay out the plan for this. We're going to be pretty rigorous here. First up, we need to establish that canonical opposition. How do the 5 hindrances fundamentally obstruct the mind? And what does it really mean for the 7 factors to be non-obstructing?
And as part of that, we'll isolate the single universal lever that governs this entire flow.
Then second, we're going to execute what you called a functional mapping. We'll show how these factors work together like a constellation to counteract the hindrances.
Right, and the key there is avoiding those rigid one-to-one pairings you see in some of the later commentaries. It's more dynamic than that.
And finally, we're going to spend the most time, the most detail, on the operational manual itself. The step-by-step progression laid out in the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, MN 118.
We're going to walk through exactly how these factors arise one after another, fulfilling that promise of awakening and just systematically clearing the field of the mind.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
It really is.
Okay, let's start with the basics then, the definitions. When the Buddha introduces these ideas in Samyutta Nikāya 46, he's not just slapping labels on mental states. He's defining their function. So let's start with the hindrances. What is the functional impact of a nīvaraṇā here?
Well, the name itself gives us a huge clue. Nīvaraṇā literally means veils or obstructions, and the sources they are completely unequivocal about their effect.
It's destructive.
It is. They're described as setaso upakilesa panyaya dubalikaron.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. They are defilements of the mind, upakalesa, and their one specific job is to weaken wisdom panyaya dubalikaron. They are states that actively obstruct clarity. They are avartana.
So it's not just that they distract you like a loud noise. It's like they chemically change your cognitive state. So you literally cannot see things clearly.
That's a great way to put it. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are on paper. When these are present, they cloud the lens of your discernment. They impair the fundamental capacity for insight.
Okay, so they're the problem. Now let's contrast that with the 7 factors of awakening, the bojjhaṅgas.
Right, and even that Pali term, bojjhaṅga, it's fascinating. Bodhi means awakening or enlightenment, and augga means a limb or a component.
So the components of awakening.
Literally. The limbs of enlightenment. And functionally, they are defined in direct opposition to the hindrances.
And how does the canon frame that opposition? Is it just that they're good and the others are bad?
It's much more precise. They're defined negatively, which is extremely powerful. They are ānāpānasati Sutta.
Okay, another breakdown, please.
It means they are non-obstructing, non-hindering, and this is crucial. They do not envelop or constrict the mind. That last term, aparinada, it suggests spaciousness. Think about it. A mind choked with desire is enveloped, it's tight.
But a mind cultivating the bojjhaṅgas has room. It has mental bandwidth.
Limitless mental bandwidth, exactly.
I see. So if the hindrances weaken wisdom by obscuring and constricting, the factors of awakening enable wisdom by opening up that space and providing stability. The relationship isn't just antagonistic.
No, it's one of mutual exclusion based in function. You simply cannot have maximum clarity and maximum constriction at the same time in the same mind. They can't coexist.
And that's the core logic from SN 46.37. It's a functional contrast. When the obstructive quality is there, the non-obstructive quality can't be.
Which leads us naturally to the central question. If the mind is always in flux, moving between these two sets of states, what's the one intentional mechanism that makes sure we're nourishing the right ones?
What's the lever? What controls the flow?
And that is where the concept of yoniso manasikāra, or wise attention, steps right onto center stage. For this, we have to turn to SN 46.51, the Ahara Sutta.
The discourse on nourishment.
Exactly. And this sutta provides the explicit operating instructions. The Buddha uses this incredibly powerful analogy of nutrition, or ahara.
Let's really dig into that metaphor. It's like, if our mental states are a kind of garden, then he's describing the system of irrigation and fertilizer.
He is. He explains that there's a precise ahara nutriment for the arising and the growth of unwholesome states, the hindrances.
So if you keep thinking about something that makes you angry,
you're feeding the anger. If you repeatedly apply your attention in ways that dwell on sensual objects or hostile thoughts, you are actively nourishing that state. It will grow. It will flourish.
And the solution is just to reverse that flow.
Absolutely. The sutta then defines an ahara non-nutriment for the abandonment and non-arising of the hindrances. And at the very same time, it defines the ahara for the arising and growth of the bojjhaṅgas.
So this is the master stroke of efficiency. What's the single universal controller of this whole nutriment flow? What decides what gets fed and what gets starved?
Yoniso manasikāra, wise attention.
And that's not just paying attention, is it?
Not at all. It's the intentional act of directing the mind toward beneficial objects and beneficial ways of seeing in this very moment. It's the conscious decision to frame an experience insightfully, rather than just reacting out of habit.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Let's use that analogy to make it crystal clear. So wise attention is like the dietary regulator.
Perfect.
If I experience a moment of frustration, that's potentially. Ill will, wise attention doesn't try to just squash the frustration.
Right, it doesn't suppress it.
Instead, it directs the mind toward, say, the causes of the feeling, or it just shifts the mind gently to the breath. And in that moment, the ill will receives zero nutriment. It has nothing to eat.
Precisely. Wise attention is simultaneously the anahara, the non-nutriment, for the hindrances,
preventing them from growing or even arising.
And it is the ahara, the nutriment for the factors of awakening. It's the gatekeeper. It controls the flow of attention and intention, which are the food source for all our mental states.
So that doctrinal summary we started with, hindrances are abandoned, factors of awakening are developed, is completely accurate. But it's not two separate jogs.
Not at all. It's a single, unified practice of cognitive repositioning, and it's all governed by wise attention.
Development and abandonment are just two sides of the same coin. And yoniso manasikāra is the edge.
And this foundational understanding is absolutely essential. We're not fighting two separate wars here. We are systematically starving the unwholesome by nourishing the wholesome. This is the very definition of canonical efficiency.
Okay, so that establishes the core principle. Now let's get into the specifics.
Now that we have that governing principle that wise attention shifts the mind from obstruction, avarana, to non-obstruction, ānāpānasati, we can look at the functional mapping. And this is where we have to be really careful to avoid those later pitfalls.
You mean the mechanical one-to-one pairings?
Exactly. The factors are a system. They work together.
So the sources show them operating as a team, right? We're not looking for one magic bullet for each problem. It's more about identifying the quality deficit that a hindrance creates and then seeing which factors acting together restore that quality.
That's the perfect way to frame it.
All right, let's go through the 5 hindrances with that functional lens. Where should we start?
Let's start with the first, and for many people, the most challenging one, kamacchanda, sensual desire.
So functionally, what's it doing to the mind?
It fragments it. That's the best word. It's constantly pulling your attention outward, chasing after some kind of gratification.
It shatters the focus?
Completely. And so the missing qualities are obvious. Inner contentment, a stable sense of joy, and unification of mind.
So if the mind is scattered all over the place by desire, which of the 7 factors come in to provide a superior alternative?
Well, 3 factors come into play almost immediately. First, and maybe most powerfully, is piti, or joy.
But this is a very specific kind of joy.
A very specific kind. It's non-sensual, niramiso joy. It's the uplift that arises naturally from seclusion and concentration. When this powerful, sublime joy is present, the trivial nature of chasing sensual craving is just. It's exposed. It gets crowded out.
You're not fighting it, you're just making it irrelevant.
Exactly. Then second, you have samadhi, or collectedness. This is the direct antidote to the scattering. It's the unification of the mind that desire constantly tries to pull apart.
And the third.
The third is upekkha, or equanimity. This factor balances the whole emotional system so the mind is no longer being jerked around by attraction or pushed away by aversion. It brings a profound stability.
That's a beautiful cognitive strategy.
Oh.
You don't suppress the desire, you just provide a higher quality of contentment that makes the old desire look cheap.
That's it, exactly. So moving to the second hindrance, vyapada, ill will, aversion.
The opposite pole.
Right. Its function is to constrict, to agitate, to heat the mind. It leads to resentment, bitterness, all forms of mental suffering. It's the absolute opposite of mental harmony.
Ill will creates this profound sense of discomfort and tension. It feels tight. So how do we counter that heat and that constriction?
Again, we bring in the uplifting and the calming factors. Piti, that same joy, immediately uplifts and brightens the mind. It's very hard for hostility to reside in a state of genuine gladness.
They just don't fit in the same room.
They don't.
Yeah.
And then, crucially, we have passaddhi, tranquility. This is what calms the mental and physical irritation that aversion produces. Ill will manifests as tension in the body, right? In the jaw, the shoulders. Tranquility is what releases that.
So it works on both the mind and body.
Absolutely. And then, once again, upekkha, equanimity, comes in to release the personal emotional charge. It lets us see the situation with balance instead of just reacting to the provocation.
So for both desire and aversion, the big two, the strategy is similar. You raise the inner quality of the mind so high with joy, and then you stabilize it so deeply with tranquility and equanimity that those grosser states just can't get a foothold.
That's the core of it. Which brings us to the mental quicksand, pinamida.
Sloth and torpor.
The problem of mental dullness, heaviness, a lack of responsiveness, the mind just feels inert.
And the missing qualities here are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Clarity, energy, and discrimination.
Which is why we need the three energizing factors.
Right. Tell us about them.
First, we engage Dhammavicaya investigation. This is active, immediate discernment of the qualities of your experience.
So not intellectual analysis, not thinking about things.
No, not at all. It's noticing the breath, the sensations, the current state of mind. Is the breath long or short? Is the mind bright or cloudy? This active investigation brightens the mind because it generates genuine interest.
Interest is the key.
It's the antidote to dullness. Then you have virya, or energy. This is the aroused, steady effort needed to maintain that continuity of attention without becoming forceful or tense.
A balanced energy.
And then, once again, piti shows up. Energizing joy. It provides the necessary lightness and vitality to overcome that feeling of heaviness.
And I mean, we have to stress a really vital point from the source material here. Torpor is cured by interest and vitality. That's Dhammavicaya and Piti-nāt, by sheer force, which is how most people try to deal with it.
That's such a common mistake.
Right. If you just try to push a dull mind, you just generate friction and make the torpor even denser. You have to make the object of your attention interesting.
Precisely. If investigation is weak, the mind loses its object and collapses into dullness. If investigation is sharp, the mind is brightly and effortlessly engaged.
Okay, so next we have the opposite extreme, uddhaka kukuka.
Restlessness and remorse. This is the high tension problem. The mind is shaking, it can't settle. It's fragmented by worry about the past, that's remorse, or anxiety about the future, which is restlessness.
The quality deficit here is just stillness, stability.
It is. So this requires the calming sequence of factors. We use passaddhi, deep calming, to subdue that frantic energy. Once the gross agitation is calmed, then samadhi, collectedness, can arise to unify the mind.
So calm first, then unification.
Always. And upekkha is the non-reactive anchor, preventing the mind from getting caught in that cycle of self-criticism or future tripping. When these factors are present, the mind is a parinada. It's unenveloped, unconstricted, and so it just naturally settles.
It finds its own equilibrium.
It does.
And that leaves us with the fifth and final hindrance, vicikicca, doubt.
This is the paralysis, the skeptical uncertainty that blocks penetration and prevents you from really committing to the engagement with your practice.
This one feels different. It's more cognitive.
It is, but the solution is still experiential. Doubt requires verification, confidence born of seeing for yourself, not just philosophical assurance.
So you can't read your way out of doubt.
You can't. You have to practice your way out. So we target this with Dhammavicaya, the examination of causes and conditions, which directly counters that speculative paralysis. Then we need sati, mindfulness, which is continuous, non-judgmental presence to maintain focus.
And the ultimate antidote.
The ultimate antidote is samadhi, experiential collectedness. Doubt only truly ends when the mind is stable enough to see the phenomena for itself. You stop asking, does this work? And you start seeing, this is what is happening.
It really stands out to me here, and it confirms our whole non-rigid approach, is how factors like piti and upekkha are just. They're all-rounders. They function across 4 of the 5 hindrances.
They're universal solvents, not specialized tools.
That's a great way to put it.
And it proves the point. The Buddha teaches them as a comprehensive, integrated set. When you strengthen one factor, you necessarily lay the foundation for the next one to arise.
Can you walk us through that sequence?
Sure. Sati anchors the mind. That allows Dhammavicaya to discern things clearly. Clear discernment requires virya to sustain it. Sustained, balanced effort brings about piti. That sublime joy allows for passaddhi, or deep tranquility. That tranquility sets the perfect stage for samadhi. And that profound stability culminates in upekkha.
It's an integrated feedback loop.
It is. Which proves the instruction from SN 46 to cultivate them always as a set, not as individual items from a toolbox.
Okay. We've established the doctrine, we've gone through the functional map. Now for what you call the most critical part of this deep dive.
The actual step-by-step process of purification. Now we have to turn to Majjhima Nikāya 118, the Ānāpānasati Sutta. This is the operational key. This is what proves the logic of SN 46 in practice.
And the Sutta is incredibly explicit about this, isn't it? It says something like, mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 7 factors of awakening.
It states it as a fact. This is the canonical sequence. The factors don't just happen randomly. They arise sequentially, each step creating the perfect mental condition for the next one, and in doing so, they systematically erode the ground the hindrances stand on.
So let's map it out. We have the 4 tetrads of Ānāpānasati. How do they map onto the 7 bojjhaṅgas?
We begin, of course, with the first tetrad. This is what establishes the foundation for the first 2 factors, sati and dhammavicaya.
So steps 1 through 4 of the practice.
Exactly. Knowing the long breath, knowing the short breath, feeling the whole body of the breath, sabakaya, and then tranquilizing the bodily formations. This is the moment when sati sambhajjhaga, the awakening factor of mindfulness, is fully established.
And that's just continuous, non-speculative presence.
That's all it is. But it's profound.
So how does just that simple foundation immediately begin to starve the hindrances?
It works in 2 ways right away. First, by anchoring the mind physically to a reliable, present moment object. The breath, it directly counters vicikiccha, or doubt.
Because you're not speculating anymore, you're just feeling.
The direct knowing replaces the need for speculation. And second, and this is crucial, it starts to address the scattering quality of uddaka, or restlessness. The attention is fixed on a tangible physical process which prevents the mind from just drifting off into anxiety about the future or regrets about the past.
Okay, so once that continuous presence, that sati is established, what happens next?
The mind automatically moves into discernment.
Which is the second factor, Dhammavicaya sambhajjhaga, investigation.
Yes, and this is still happening within those first 4 steps as the clarity deepens. This isn't some big intellectual exercise. It's experiential discrimination. You're discerning the qualities of the breath. You notice how a long in-breath relates to a short out-breath, how a coarse breath feels different from a subtle one.
You start to see patterns.
You see how different mental states correlate with different breath patterns? This active process of discernment is the direct medicine for the dullness we talked about earlier.
So it's the antidote to thina middha.
Precisely. The sustained interest that's generated by Dhammavicaya is inherently opposed to sloth and torpor. You simply cannot be dull if you are genuinely experientially engaged in observation.
And I imagine this also further undermines doubt.
It destroys its foundation. You start to see this evident causality, how the mind conditions the body, how the body conditions the mind, and that experiential seeing leaves no room for speculative doubt.
So sati provides the container for the attention, and Dhammavicaya provides the light within it. What sustains the whole operation? What keeps it going?
That would be the third factor, virya sambhojjhaga, energy. This arises as that continuous and keen attention from the first 2 factors is maintained. It's the transition into steps 5 and 6 of the sutta. The effort becomes steady, non-strained, and continuous.
This balanced approach to effort is what prevents both collapse into dullness and tension from trying too hard.
It's the middle way of effort. This balanced energy maintains continuity, which effectively removes any remaining thena-middle lethargy just can't hold on against this aroused, stable vitality, and it settles kukuka, remorse, or wavering effort, because the practice is now self-sustaining and has a clear direction.
All right, now we arrive at what feels like the pivotal moment in the whole purification process, the second tetrad, which focuses on feeling.
This is the major turning point.
This is where Piti Sambhojjhaga, joy, and Passaddhi Sambhojjhaga, tranquility, arise.
It is. Steps 5 and 6 of the practice are all about experiencing joy and gladness, piti paisavati. This profound uplift arises directly from the mind's seclusion, from the withdrawal from the sensory world that was established in the first 2 steps.
And the resulting joy is that niramiza you mentioned, that non-sensual joy of concentration.
And this is the moment where we directly address the 2 primary opposing hindrances.
Craving and aversion, kamacchanda and bhayapada.
Yes. Sensual desire, kamacchanda, is utterly outshone. It's a simple question of quality. Why would the mind seek external, fleeting sensual pleasure when it is immersed in a powerful, internal, sublime joy?
The attraction just evaporates.
It diminishes radically. And at the same time, hostility, bhayapada, simply cannot coexist with this internal state of gladness. This step is the deep cognitive cleansing of the mind's primary pulls and pushes.
Okay, so once that joy, which can be pretty exuberant, sometimes almost overwhelming, has done its job of clearing the field, what then? It has to settle down, right? Otherwise, it can become a subtle form of agitation itself.
That's the perfect observation, and that's the move into the next factor. Passaddhi Sambhojjhaga, tranquility. This is step 7. Tranquilizing the bodily formations, pasamhaya kayasokara.
What does that feel like?
The breath becomes extremely subtle, maybe almost disappears. The entire physical and mental process enters a state of deep, profound calm. This is the necessary stabilization after the powerful uplift of piyapur.
And this tranquility is the direct and complete antidote to that high-tension problem of restlessness.
Absolutely. Udaka kukuka, restlessness and remorse, they dissolve completely here. That agitation cannot survive in this deepening physical and mental calm. And at this point, the mind is functionally a nīvaraṇā.
Unobstructed.
All the gross obstructions have been neutralized or suppressed by the development of these preceding factors.
And it's only after this profound tranquility is realized that the mind naturally moves into unification.
Which is samadhi sambhojjhaga, collectedness.
This is a huge point.
It is. Steps 8 through 10 in the sutta describe this natural process. The mind becomes fully unified. Attention is effortless and stable. This is the establishment of deep concentration, where all 5 hindrances are what's called vikambita,
Meaning,
completely absent, suppressed by the sheer power and purity of that unification.
so this sequence, passaddhi, leading to samadhi, is the canonical proof that collectedness is an outcome of purification. It's not a forced preliminary step.
You've got it. You clear the field first, then the field unifies itself.
And with the mind unified, stable, and completely clear, we move to the final factor.
The 7th, upekkha sambhojjhaga, equanimity.
This corresponds to steps 11 and 12, focusing on release and stability.
This is purified awareness. It's balanced, it's stable, it's perfectly non-reactive. There's no push to hold on to the state of collectedness, and there's no pull toward any external objects.
It's the pinnacle of balance.
It is. And once the mind achieves this stable, unattached balance, the hindrances are not only absent, but they are actively prevented from re-entering, unless the entire foundation of mindfulness collapses.
Wow. So Ānāpānasati really does serve as the complete step-by-step demonstration of how these non-obstructive qualities grow organically, and in doing so, they starve the hindrances of their nutriment and fulfill the promise of awakening.
That's the entire process, laid out in the Buddha's own words.
That detailed walkthrough of MN 118, it really shows the elegance of the original canonical model. But as you know, as the sources developed over time, interpretation began to shift.
They did.
And for the serious practitioner listening, understanding where the later systematizations, like what we find in a text like the Visuddhimagga, diverge from the Buddha's organic model is, well, it seems vital for avoiding inefficiency and a lot of frustration.
I think it's one of the most important things a practitioner can understand. The primary shift we see is the move from an organic sequential system to a more mechanical, sometimes rigid, tool-based system.
And this leads to a few key divergences.
At least 3, yes.
So the first one is this issue of mechanical pairing. versus the integrated system we've been talking about.
Right. The Nikayas, as we've seen, insist the bojjhaṅgas are an interdependent constellation. They grow together. Later systems, however, introduce these fixed antidotes.
The classic example.
Exactly. If you have sensual desire, you must use contemplation of foulness, asubha. If you have ill will, you must practice loving kindness, metta.
And those are great practices in their own right.
Of course, they are hugely beneficial. But treating them as fixed, isolated tools contradicts the functional logic of SN 46, where we saw that piti, samadhi, and upekkha all work together to neutralize desire systemically.
It's like trying to fix a complex engine by just swapping out one part, without understanding how all the parts work together.
That's a perfect analogy. And this brings us to the second divergence, the issue of premature samadhi engineering.
This sounds like a big one.
This is perhaps the most critical practical error a meditator can make. Later frameworks can sometimes imply that strong absorption, or jhana, can be forced early on through sheer willpower.
Just by focusing really, really hard.
Right. But the sequence in MN 118 is a direct and powerful counterargument to that. Passaddhi, tranquility, must precede samadhi, collectedness.
So if a practitioner tries to force unification when their mind is still agitated or restless, what's the actual consequence? What happens?
They just create more tension. They actually increase uddhacca, the very restlessness they're trying to solve. They generate all this internal friction because they are reversing the fundamental law of cause and effect.
The mind has to settle before it can collect.
It has to. Trying to skip passaddhi, trying to jump straight to samadhi leads to failure, and it reinforces this false belief that deep concentration is just unattainable for them.
And the third divergence you mentioned, it relates to the timing of insight versus calm.
Vipassana versus samatha, yes. Later methods often suggest alternating between the two, using analytical insight to break up mental states and then using calm to collect the mind again.
And what's the canonical position on that?
The canonical position, which you find in multiple suttas, is that insight is dependent on collectedness. The phrase is samaite site yataphuta janati.
It means
Insight seeing things as they truly are is a function of a mind that is free from hindrances and collected.
so if you try to analyze reality while your mind is agitated by doubt or desire,
Your insight will be purely intellectual, not experiential, and it will be prone to error. The most efficient path, according to the sources, is to cultivate the conditions for clarity first.
this shifts the whole emphasis of the practice. It's not about trying to analyze your problems anymore.
No, it's about systematically cultivating the conditions for the problems to disappear on their own.
Which brings us to the diagnostic application of all this. Every problem you have in meditation is, at its root, a bojjhaṅga imbalance.
That's the framework. Use the 7 factors as your diagnostic checklist. We can run through a few of the most common practical problems.
Let's do it. First, the heavy mind. Problem. Too sleepy or dull. Tinamita.
The pitfall here, the wrong response, is to try to tense up, to push harder, to increase the pressure of your attention.
Which we've all done.
We all have. The diagnosis from this framework is that your Dhammavikaya is weak and your Virya is weak. Your attention is passive. The correction then is to actively engage Dhammavikaya. Start noticing qualities.
Like what?
You could count the length of the breath. Feel the subtle temperature change as the air comes in and goes out. Discern the exact boundary of the sensation. Do something to awaken interest.
And that engagement naturally provides the right kind of energy.
A gentle, sustainable Virya, yes. Sleepiness is fundamentally cured by engaging the mind, not by forcing it.
Okay, next, the opposite problem. The high-tension mind. Problem. Agitated. The mind won't settle. Uddhacca kukuka.
The pitfall here is forced one-pointedness, trying to use the breath as an anchor to stop the thoughts.
To suppress everything.
Right, and it just creates more agitation. The diagnosis is simple. Passaddhi, tranquility, is underdeveloped. The correction must follow the sequence from MN 118. You have to focus on step 7, tranquilizing the bodily formations.
How do you do that practically?
Use long, slow, relaxing exhalations. This soothes the nervous system. Consciously soften the muscles in your face and your hands and your belly. You have to actively create the condition for calm. If the agitation persists, you might even check the preceding factor. Maybe the piti was too strong and you never let it settle into stillness.
You have to trust that samadhi will follow passaddhi, not the other way around.
That's the rule, always. Okay, third common problem. Desire or aversion keeps returning. Kamachandabada.
So the practitioner feels like they're making progress, But then some external sight or sound or some annoying thought just keeps pulling them out of their concentration.
The diagnosis here is that the mind hasn't yet tasted the true, superior satisfaction of non-sensual joy. PD is either weak or completely absent.
So the mind is still looking outside for its happiness.
It is. So the correction is to return to seclusion, to reinforce the earlier steps of Ānāpānasati, to make sure the conditions for that Niramisa joy are being met. You can even actively generate gratitude or gladness for the simple moment of clarity you have. Allow that non-sensual experience to crowd out the craving.
You're applying that Ahara principle directly, starving the sense craving by feeding the inner joy.
Exactly. And finally, the paralyzing mind. Doubt about the practice. Vicikiccha.
This is the practitioner who's endlessly reading books, switching techniques, asking for reassurance.
And the pitfall is seeking that external reassurance. The canonical correction is purely internal. Strengthen sati, continuous presence, and strengthen samadhi, collectedness. Every single moment of sustained, collected attention is the experiential proof that the mind can be trained.
So doubt ends by seeing, not by believing.
It only ends by seeing for yourself.
It's an optimized feedback loop then. If one factor is weak, the whole system can stall, and a hindrance rushes in to fill the vacuum.
But if you apply wise attention to nourish the whole set, the purification is systematic and it's self-correcting.
The big realization here for the practitioner seems to be that if you focus entirely on nourishing these 7 factors, you don't even need to worry about fighting the 5 hindrances.
You don't. They are rendered non-operative by the systemic maturation of these wholesome qualities. They simply lose their place to stand.
Well, this deep dive has taken us directly into the canonical engine room of mental development. We really went beyond that simple slogan, Nīvaraṇā, bojjhaṅgā bhavanaya.
We did. We got to see the exact mechanics, the gears turning, as revealed in SN 46 and MN 118.
And the key takeaway seems to be that the factors of awakening are not just a random collection of tools. They're an organic system of mental maturation that arises naturally through practices like mindfulness of breathing.
And through the disciplined, moment-to-moment application of wise attention yoniso manasikāra, we ensure that those 7 non-obstructive qualities mature in their proper sequence.
And as they reach fruition, the 5 mental hindrances they lose their power to defile the mind and weaken wisdom,
leading to unobstructive clarity.
The efficiency of this path is probably its greatest lesson.
I agree. It's a systematic, replicable, and self-diagnostic framework. It's fundamentally concerned with cause and effect, not just belief.
So, to wrap up, here's the final provocative thought for you to carry forward, building on our whole discussion of the canonical sequence. The sources are absolutely clear on this point. True insight seeing reality as it truly is a direct function of a mind that is samahita.
Collected and fully free from the 5 hindrances.
Exactly. So consider this. How much of our mental effort do we typically waste trying to analyze profound truths like impermanence or non-self barstav, while our mind is simultaneously boiling with restlessness or paralyzed by doubt?
It's a futile effort.
It is. The most efficient path, according to the Buddha's own operating manual, is to stop struggling against the noise and instead to focus all your energy on nurturing the organic conditions, the bojjhaṅgas, for the noise to naturally disappear.
That shift in focus from struggling to cultivating is the key.
It's the key to accelerating your clarity.
That is the path to unobstructive clarity.
A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the factors of awakening. We'll see you next time.